Okay, we reach what we grandly call the closing keynote, which really puts the pressure on our next speaker, but I promise you that it's not closing in the sense of close your eyes or close your minds. It's just the contrary. Chief Digital Officer at Konecranes PLC and a member of its group executive board. So this is not just any little minnow here. This is the main man. Please give it up for Juha Pankakoski, and he is going to find the value behind Hypecase. You have to explain that to us, Juha. Come along, sir. Oh, with water. Very good.
Thank you, Jeremy. That was quite uplifting. I was talking at a seminar on a topic very similar to this one a couple of weeks back, and I was introduced there not once, but twice before I had the opportunity to speak, coming from a company that is working in the really true old school technology, to the extent that it got a bit boring after a while. It's almost like complimenting a child for trying to run or something else like that. So it was much more uplifting. Thank you for that. But we are in the old school technology. If there anything is that is old school, it is the lifting of things. Mankind has struggled from almost the very beginning to overcome gravity, and that's what we're still after. And it's still one of the great mysteries of mankind today on how the Egyptians were able to build pyramids already more than 4,000 years ago, since Konecranes was only established less than 200 years ago. But even if the topic on how to lift things is an age-old dilemma, it doesn't mean that the solutions need to be that as well. So my name is Juha Pankakoski. I'm the Chief Digital Officer and CIO for Konecranes. And part of my responsibility is to look after the corporate digitalization strategy, all things digital. So what does that include? When I get asked that question, I like to use this particular phrase, which was first launched by a digital marketing company, Razorfish, and later adopted by Microsoft, which states that almost everything that can be digital will be. Now, even though that gives me a good mandate to comment almost everything apart from gravity, I don't quite agree with this particular definition, because even though things can be digital, it doesn't necessarily mean that they should be or that it would be worth trying to make them to be so. I do, however, agree that digitalization itself is one of the key megatrends right up in there with the globalization or urbanization. It is something that I define to be really what we do to use digital technologies to change business models, to create new revenue, new opportunities, new businesses. And it has the opportunity to fundamentally change several things within a company. How we naturally contact our customers and get in touch with them through digital channels. How do we collaborate with our customers, with our suppliers, with external parties? How do we deliver the products and services all together? There's always nowadays a digital element embedded to that. How we enhance these physical products and services with the digital cloud that we build around them. How we can postpone the transition from the physical entity to a digital entity, from a digital entity to a physical entity by using different sort of means to develop and design products. And lastly, but not least, how do we manage this creation of these digital entities, digital twins that arise from our products and services and deliverables, and how they can change the business models in which we work with. But Konecranes is in the lifting business. We design and manufacture overhead cranes and heavy lift trucks, and we maintain and inspect hundreds of thousands of equipment in our customers' premises. We can be found in large ports, shipyards, logistics hubs, almost every manufacturing facility. We build world's biggest cranes. There is a nice document from National Geographic in YouTube if you want to check that one on the erection of the world's biggest crane. You can search that just by using the world's biggest crane. But we can be found also in rather unusual places, so to speak. For instance, in this room, there's close to 20 of our products. Now, those of you sitting in the center of the room may appreciate the fact that our key values are safety and reliability. But up close here, it seems to be that the hooks are from competition, so there's still a lot of room in the sides if you want to move. but even though there's a very low likelihood that something will happen today. But we are not basically in the process of just lifting things, but if you look at the very mission of the company and how we address this problem or this issue from a company perspective, it is to lift businesses. It's lift customers' own businesses to provide solutions that provide better value for our customers. And then when you look at our commitment and contribution to industrial internet, what it really means, I think it's a very unique statement, or very unique to find it in a manufacturing company statement, that we don't desire to be the biggest crane manufacturer or the most technologically advanced. But our vision truly is to know in real time how millions of lifting devices and machine tools perform, and use this information 24/7 to make our customers' processes safer and more productive. So there is a real commitment on the very highest level of the company to excel in the industrial internet. Now, we are the biggest company in our own industry, but compared with the giants that have been presenting here earlier, we shrink in size. But there's a couple of things perhaps to take away in those numbers, which explain to some extent why we've been able to turn the opportunity in the industrial internet to value. One of them is the fact that we are actually two businesses in one. We are a combination of equipment business and a service business. That's well indicated in the portions of the revenue. So 58% nowadays, actually 55% of the revenue comes from the equipment business and 45% comes from the service business. And thanks to that, like many companies that have the similar sort of a mix, large portion of our employees are service technicians. We are present in quite a number of different locations. Since we need to be present close to our customers, that also means that the number of sites that we have globally is fairly high. But I think perhaps the most interesting piece of the puzzle regarding our business is that out of this close to 500,000 pieces of equipment that we have in our service contract base, 3/4 of that is manufactured by someone else than Konecranes. So majority of the service business that we're doing is done for equipment manufactured by someone else. And when you combine with that the information that when we look at the service market, our biggest competition there are our customers. 2/3 of the cranes in the marketplace are serviced by our customers themselves. So only 1/3 of the market is what we define as open market. So out of the equipment that we produce, 2/3 we won't be servicing, but out of the equipment that we service, 3/4 are manufactured by someone else than us. That gives us a fairly good visibility into what is happening in the marketplace, and also gives us very unique, perhaps different sort of business model that fits well with the industrial internet. Now, we've been consciously taking steps on starting to increase the installed base that we have for cranes that can communicate and provide data back to us. Today we have close to 10,000 remote connections. Compared again with some of the industrial giants here, that's not a big number, but when you compare that in our business, we're working in a low to medium volume, and one of the difficulties is that the installed base renews very slowly. The typical life cycle of a crane is 30 to 40 years. We think that that is already a fairly good number, even though it's quite far from our vision of millions of devices. Now, our technological heritage and know-how, the domain knowledge that was referred to earlier during this conference, is in mechanical and electrical engineering. So we've been developing and designing cranes for nearly 200 years, and one of our key principles is that we develop and manufacture all these lifting critical components ourselves. This allows us to optimize this componentry for lifting applications, and this is the competence that we call the core of lifting. And there are presently a bit over 500,000 of these core of liftings in operation around the globe. Now, this is the basis on which we then build the strategic initiatives that take us from the present day situation towards our vision. And there's 3 strategic initiatives that we've identified, and I think they've stayed same for the past 5 years. They are industrial internet segment-based offering and One Konecranes. Now, in context of this particular conference, I could easily speak of any one of these 3, because what we're doing in for instance, segment-based offering is developing products for both the high-end market and the standard market using digital technology. The One Konecranes is the harmonization initiative to line our own ways to address, manage, and store data so that we can share the information together with our customers. So that is one of the building points and building blocks for the industrial internet here. But since we're here to talk about defining the way forward for the industrial internet, I'll focus on that particular topic. Now, the previous presentations have included definitions on what IoT and industrial internet and Industry 4.0 are. And I'll just include a couple of thoughts in here myself as well. Some can argue that this is all only semantics, but I think it's good to understand there's three different areas where you can derive value. The Internet of Things, when it was first introduced in 15 years back, was related to how RFID could change P&G's supply chain. And I think when we're talking about IoT today, we're not actually talking about that opportunity that was identified back then, which was what would happen if the things would have an identity, if they would own the data associated to them, if they would understand how they need to be managed. What we're talking today when we're talking about IoT is mainly IoD, Internet of Devices. So what do we do to connect the things that actually manage and operate and produce things, not the things themselves? So I think we're still fairly far from the potential of IoT. The industrial internet, as I see it, is the opportunity that comes from convergence of this physical and digital, what we can do to make the machines more intelligent, to be able to communicate with each other. And then when I look at Industry 4.0, I see an initiative that's much more focused on the potential that comes from interlinking all of these aspects together. So what is the value that can be derived out of ecosystems, out of complete supply chains? So three different initiatives. But the way I was planning to address industrial internet during these 30 minutes that I have is to discuss shortly about the opportunity and the challenge itself, even though that has already been widely discussed. Then look at the solution that we've developed at Konecranes, some of the learnings that we've gotten on it so far. What are the things that we focus related to data to make it into knowledge? And unfortunately, I think that due to time, I won't have the opportunity to discuss about the ecosystems or the future, what do we do with startups and so forth, but I leave that into later. So, industrial internet, the opportunity. I think since the very beginning of this conference, we've heard these stories of this massive opportunity that's associated with industrial internet. And I don't think that I would be able to add much to the statements already made, but with the risk of repeating, if I'll just recap a couple of the most relevant takeaways. So it is a transformational opportunity that's measured in trillions. I think all the examples that I know of, perhaps apart from the fact that McKinsey this June predicted that in the next 10 years, the value created by our IoT is equivalent to 11% of the world economy. I think all the other billion, trillion opportunities have already been stated. Now, this is the part that makes companies excited. Now, then there's the second area, which I think was well put together in a report done by Cisco a couple of years back in 2013, where they indicated, based on research, that most likely most of this value, this new value that is generated, this huge opportunity, is generated by someone else than the companies that are generating it today. So there is going to be radical redistribution of value. And that is then this particular topic that makes companies worried. And then there's a third element, which GE often refers to, that the thing that puts credibility behind this entire initiative is the fact that there's millions and millions of devices out in the field. And if we can improve the performance or the reliability of them by even 1%, so this called 1% rule, then this will turn immediately and automatically into billions. So these three things describe well the actual opportunity. But as we know, there are quite a few challenges associated to it. Now, whenever there is an opportunity for success, there's also a good opportunity for failure. And this particular quote from Charles Dickens regarding the Tale of Two Cities describes the situation following the Great Revolution in France, and I think it fits quite well into our case of industrial internet. So the jury is still out on the value and understanding how this in practice will be made to happen. So which standards to choose from, which platform to implement, what is the best way to invest, and how do I turn this into value? And it was, I think, earlier this year by this particular same conference where there was an interview made for 800 European manufacturing leaders regarding their opinion and understanding of the value and potential of IoT and how they're addressing it. And I think if you remember the summary of that particular study, that particular interview, a high proportion of the interviewees said that IoT is very high on the strategic agenda. A high percentage, 90%, stated that they either have started IoT initiatives themselves or will start them by the close of this year. And the same population stated that by far the biggest challenge that they see with this thing is that they don't actually know how, why. So what in it is it that turns this into a business? Now, you don't really need a Gartner analyst to tell you that if there is a 90% of population that start investing, and out of that same population, 70% state that they don't know why they're doing this, there most likely will be several disappointments on the way. I think that's more than given. But I think it also highlights well the fact that people feel that there is this huge opportunity and they don't have the stomach to not embark on this journey, even though they don't know yet how this can be done. There's also several risks associated to the B2B internet implementation that differ slightly from the B2C implementation. And I think the IIC put this well together in their report when they said that one of these things that people and companies should look after when they do these implementations is to ensure that they have paid considerable amount of attention to safety, security, and resilience of these solutions. And these are things that I think many of the companies find as a big relevant risk today. We've experimented quite a bit with different sort of elements on IoT and industrial internet ourselves. And recently we had one event where we had invited startups to develop new ways to drive cranes and to develop interfaces in which the users communicate with the cranes. And we had one major wow event during the event itself, and there was a one particular team that used a smart watch to drive a crane. And it's really impressive to see a crane that weighs several tons to be driving a 20-ton mass during the runway. But that was not the wow event. The wow event was when the watch ran out of battery and the crane kept on moving. And regarding security, we already know that last year there was a security breach in a German steel mill where the hackers entered the company systems and prevented a controlled rundown of the mill itself, causing significant challenges. So these are things that are happening today. And the only way in which you can secure yourself from these sort of threats is to ensure that the architecture, when you design and develop it in the first place, is as little attractive to the hackers as it can be. So this is the framework that we have in place today. And like I said, we've been on this journey for a couple of years. And what I'd like to do is share with you some of the learnings and the successes. And if I first start with the actual framework and how we've implemented this ourselves. Now, according to our specifications, what we want to do with industrial internet is to make machines intelligent, aware of their condition and their surroundings, and network them to create this real-time visibility for enhanced safety and productivity. These two themes, safety and productivity, repeat in all our offering. This we believe to be a unique service that we use as a differentiator that provides us with a price premium, and the price premium is related to the existing products. Now, we've had smart cranes with smart features in place for quite some time, so this is nothing new to us. So this is something that we've done for several years. Basically use digital technology to make the lifting process faster, safer, created virtual spaces in the shop floor, and converted manual operations to semi-automated or automated tasks, and assisting the operators in the daily things. But the investments that we put in place for digital technologies, both in the equipment development side and the service side, have long since surpassed the investments that we put in traditional products. And since 2011, what we've done is we've equipped our cranes with connectivity solutions and sensors even if that's not been requested by the customer, to start building this meaningful installed base of connected cranes. Now, what can we monitor via sensors on a crane? As you can see from the diagram, almost everything. And that's not the right question to ask. The right question is to ask not what you can, but what you should. Where there is a clear connection between information that's provided by this data and a customer value. How it basically is all put together, what we do is we collect data using our own sensors that we've developed for custom-specific purposes, third-party sensors, the AC drives, feed that information into the diagnostic unit where most of the intelligence associated with the process lies. Remember, our intent is to make the cranes more intelligent, so most of the decisions based on the data are done at the crane. We deliver only a fraction of the data, the incidents, the alerts, meaningful events to the gateway, and then provide visibility through that to the local operators on the crane side, to customer systems, and then feed it to the cloud, where we then analyze it and combine it with the information coming from the business systems and provide to our customers all of this data through a customer view, through a customer portal. We use this information in multiple different ways. We use it to support our sales and service in doing diagnostics both online and offline. We use it as a tool for service technicians, so they're connected to the information. They feed information based on their visits to the same tool, and like I said, we use this then to display all the information that we collect from our customers through the customer portal, customer application. One of the things that we feel very strongly about is that our capability to consolidate and present the data through a single uniform interface is a key competitive advantage. And what we do is we don't only present the machine data, as you see on the right-hand side here, which can then be drilled in for further analysis and detailed data, but also the information coming and the actions resulting out of that data and the findings. So for instance, here the service calendar and what has been done, what will be done on the equipment, the documentation, the contractual agreements, and the master data associated with this activity. So this basically is a helicopter view of the industrial internet platform that we created for ourselves. Now, with all this ready and all this fuss and publicity going on the industrial internet, you most likely would expect our customers to be requesting, even demanding these sort of functionalities. Now, guess again. Don't take it from me, take it from Edward Zemming, but this is not happening. Customer expectations, customers are not the ones that drive the development. The utilization and the implementation of these features and functionalities can happen fast if the customers embark on this, but customers are unfortunately not the ones to go for, like one of the presenters earlier made the comment during his presentation that if you go out and start making customer studies and market studies and based on that develop your offering, you're taking it from the wrong end. What actually we're doing is fighting to change the present norm in how equipment and services are perceived. And that is the difficulty that we need to overcome. Now, it's very nice to see, for instance, the presentations on Bosch power tools, but I think the norm is that if my power tool today would start talking to me, I'd most likely be frightened and throw it out of the window. That's not the way we expect the devices to perform. They are dumb, they don't sense, and they don't communicate. Now, it would be excellent if I would pick up a drill, it would tell me that by the way, you haven't been using the drill for the past 4 months, so would you like to have a recap training on how to use it? And the end of the drill is, by the way, not sharp, and the voltage of the drill is so low that if you want to do something more demanding, please charge me first. And unfortunately, when my son picks up the same drill, it doesn't state that, by the way, Larry, your father has stated that you shouldn't be using this tool at all, so give it up. Now, we can do all of this to cranes and more. We can identify the users, we can know how they're using the crane, we can adapt the usage and the performance of the crane based on the users. but this is not what the customers are requesting today. And the same applies for service. The norm on the service side is to measure the quality of the service between the time it takes from the crane user to start shouting and the first person to start climbing the ladder. Now, the concept where breakdowns don't occur, where all of this maintenance can be done beforehand, is something that we need to educate and teach our customers. So this is not something that will happen overnight. So just equipping the sensors doesn't turn it into a business value or something the customers would crave. But there is certainly business value to be found if you can look at the right places. Now, talking to colleagues in other companies, I think that there's some very common mistakes or misconceptions that one should perhaps avoid. Now, many of us come from equipment companies, and equipment companies basically perceive their products as the manifestations of their knowledge, their know-how. And to improve the design of or performance of the product, the industrial internet is a very poor investment itself. The sensoring that you put on equipment provides relatively little information that can be used to improve the product itself. If you want a better return on your investment, put the sensors on an equipment, put it in a controlled space, and then punish the hell out of it, and you'll get much more meaningful data out of it. What the sensors provide is customer-specific use case data on that specific incident. And for companies that are product-specific, this data frequently is of little use. And unfortunately, many of these companies also in their business models are very transactional. Their activities are focused on winning the customer at the point in time when they choose to decide whether they go with our product or with the competitor's product. For these companies, service is regarded as after sales, which is done to keep customer happy until the next purchase. Now, unfortunately, industrial internet provides information over the life of the use of the product. And for transactional companies, making that and turning that into a business value is often quite challenging. One of the misconceptions or one of the belittlings that I see happening also is that many companies don't embark on industrial internet because they feel that they master this already, because it's only advanced remote diagnostics. So what is the additional business value here? And I think there you're missing the point, all the opportunities that can be derived out of really using the data on how the customer uses the equipment. And then some see this as a pure technological challenge. And this is something that previous speakers have also addressed. There is certainly a technological challenge aspect to it as well. And that, I think, primarily today is related to the rapidly shrinking unit prices. If you buy an IoT solution today, it's a fraction of the cost, less than 1/10 of what it used to be 1 year back. And the connection price that you buy today, you can get a year's worth from what you buy for when last year the same thing costed the same for a month. So there is certainly some challenge, but it's not a pure technology challenge. The value does exist, and it can be found, but the question is, are you structured to take advantage of it? The information that you can generate through the use of industrial internet provides you the opportunity to understand your customers better than they do themselves. It provides information on how the customer uses the product, how the product wears out, is it optimal for their particular process. It provides you a better understanding to know when the customer needs to replace the product and whether in the replacement it would be better to a modernization or a change to a new equipment. And when you're quoting for an equipment, you're able to know whether you should be quoting for what the customer is asking or whether you should persuade the customer to consider something that would be better fit for their requirements. It's, again, not a good fit with the transactional business models, but if your business model includes a service element, living together with the customer day in, day out, well, if you don't have to turn your product, your knowledge into value on the day when the equipment is purchased on that one particular transaction, then there is significant value to be gained out of industrial internet. And like I said, it's not yet IoT, it's more IoD, but even then the opportunities of using this information are almost limitless. But the way the technology changes today puts on additional challenge, and that is not the challenge of when to embark on this one, but how to keep up with this technological change. And in order for you to utilize the opportunities, what you need to allow is, first of all, the capability to fail in your own attempts and your own trials, but also to build the openness in your products that allows third parties to come in and enhance it with their developments and their innovations. Now, basically what it requires is a mindset change. Mindset change on who is the competition. In our case, it means that it's not just the traditional competitors, but it can be, and it today often is, our suppliers, the companies that we consider as partners previously. It requires a mindset change on customer needs, what your products and services should be like, how they should be designed, how they should interact. It requires a mindset change on how you perceive the use of data. The traditional way of using and addressing data is to create sufficient amount of data so that you can manage one single transaction, and then archive that transaction in case it is needed in some latter phase. But with the industrial internet, with the new world of data management, all this builds a picture of the customer relationship that needs to be managed. But if you can manage that, it then provides significant new business opportunities. But likely, even more so, it requires a business model change. Now, remember, we're talking about a radical transitional change. Now, the question is, if your business model is only focused on making value with one particular model, can it change? Is it capable of changing or evolving into a model where you can derive that value that is required to sustain the company and build it forward with other means? Are you able to build a sufficient service presence, build your capabilities into consult services, into training, and so forth? Because all this is required in this transformational change. The value that it creates is not limited to just one particular layer. It's happening in multiple places and multiple areas. And basically what it does, it also changes almost every job in the company. And it needs to be adopted before it turns into value. And I think that's one of the critical areas and elements of it. So what are the sort of findings that we've been able to pick up if I take just some very simple and general examples? One of them is that we know that in certain industries, over 1/3 of personnel and asset-related incidents, sometimes even death-occurring incidents, are related to lifting. And that's quite understandable. When you lift heavy loads from one place to another, there's always a likelihood that something can happen. And we know that through the tools that we have already today in place, through remote diagnostics, through sensoring, we can prevent over 2/3 of these incidents. Now, would you consider that this is a compelling argument enough to sell the equipment? No, unfortunately not. This is not something that usually works as a sales argument when you talk to customers. And perhaps it's because even though we all know that statistically accidents will happen, for the person that is subject to an accident, it's always a surprise incident. This is something that speaks to policymakers, to lawmakers, and perhaps to insurance companies. So that is something that will come through the governance, but not through customer requirements. But then there's other things that we can take from the data that we're gathering. We know, for instance, that in certain industry and product category, our customers are not using the equipment that frequently. Actually, we know that 80% of those customers in that particular segment, and we can define it even more specifically, use the equipment so seldom that there's a 99.6% likelihood that they won't need a first spare part within the first 10 years. And we know actually that for most of those customers, 96% of them, there is a likelihood that they don't need any within the first 100 years. Now, how can you ask, can I turn this into a business opportunity? Now, for these customers, what we can do, since we have the data and we have the information available, we can go after them and provide them a service offering with all spare parts included. Now, our competition may not be too interested in taking the risk. And then perhaps at some point in time, we can even consider that the sort of design that we have put in place, perhaps that could be lightened to some extent so that it would perhaps be acceptable for the customers if they would use the first spare part even after the using of the equipment by the first 30 years. What else? There's also good things that we can learn from the data. One of the things that we like to monitor and where you need a very detailed and custom-specific sensoring is how to monitor gear breakdowns and wear-outs. But through the analysis and through the work that we've done in that particular field, we found out that there are secondary indicators that we can use. Since we've been able to identify the signature associated with the gear breakdown, we've also then been able to identify the signature in the intake currency frequency that actually tells the same as this special sensoring that we built for monitoring gear breakdowns. And what that provides us is the opportunity to basically develop capabilities and intelligence of the crane when it's already been launched without adding new hardware, without adding new expensive things or going out and installing something new on the crane itself. So we can improve the product after it's left the factory. We also know, for instance, that based on the use of the crane, we know that one braking from full speed will wear the design more than a year's worth of normal use. And if our customer has operators that have a tendency of using this particular way of stopping the crane, it can significantly cause injuries and then also shorten the life cycle of the product. And the way we can use this is to go after, once again, the customer conversation and convince them on what benefits they would gain out of perhaps training their personnel or doing something else to improve the life cycle of the product. But in order for you to use these opportunities, you really need to rethink your own business model. So there's plenty of opportunities if you have access to the data. And data, in a sense, is like new oil, so it can also be refined into a number of different products. The challenge when you have the access to the data is normally not to get sufficient quantity of data. Actually, several studies show that less than 1% of the data is actually used for actions, but to make it into meaningful data. And we have competitors who say that they're also having IoT platforms, and the data that we see them providing to customers is usually what you have in the top. So or customer is able to see the information that their crane did 28 starts and stops today. It moved 427 meters and then lifted 87.3 tons. And when you go out boldly and present this new exciting information to the customer, usually you get a blank staring face and question, so what? This isn't meaningful data for the customers. You need to be able to enrich the data with contextual data that comes from different sources. So when you then add into this the information that we get from the reliability studies, from our own simulations, then we're able to state that the same thing means that the hoisting brake that the customer has, based on the usage that they've had on the crane so far, has less than 10% of the expected life remaining. And based on the present usage, how frequently they use the crane, this means that there's less than 2 weeks before that crane will stop because of the breakage of the brake. And it also means that if you have a service contract with us, we'll change your brake next week because we know that you have a scheduled maintenance breakdown at that particular time, so there's no time lost because of this particular activity. And we know that this, one of the reasons which is causing these brakes to fail so fast, so frequently, is the fact that the operators on the second shift are using this particular way of working, which, if eliminated, could extend the life of the product by 30%. So the data needs to be enriched. It is not just the pure machine data that provides the value that you can then turn into customer offering. And this is one of the things why I have little faith today on the horizontal IoT platforms that are being offered, because what they usually provide is this mundane, non-interested, sometimes meaningless data. And not a week goes by when there is a company, whether it's a small or large company, that in a very exciting manner comes to me and says that we have this capability of providing you with an IoT platform from the sensor to the presentation layer. And what it basically means for us is that if we use this opportunity and build it to our customer solutions, we can provide our customers with meaningless data and we'll isolate ourselves from our customers. So from my perspective, it's not that great of a sales speech or business proposition, so I have a bit of a difficulty understanding why this is something that so many companies want to provide us. So combining this information with reliability analysis simulations enhances its productivity further. And what we then do with this information is that we turn this into algorithms. And with the use of this two-way communication back to the cranes, we then improve the already installed product. So we have this green banana effect where the product gets better during the use and during the life of it, or this reverse aging phenomena that was discussed earlier. So these are some of the things, some of the takeaways that we can do with the information that we're collecting. But one of the things I think that is also good to remember regarding data, that like technology, also data carries itself a significant risk. And it hasn't been much discussed so far, but there is the risk of ownership and intellectual property associated to the data. So actually who owns the data itself, privacy and confidentiality, what data can you gather, what is the regulatory framework associated with this, and the liability. If you're monitoring the equipment, what is the liability if something happens? So several things that still need to be considered. Now, like I said, I won't have the time to go through the ecosystems or the startups, but I'll leave you with a small video and just a brief description of that one, and then I'll be done. So can I have the video, please?
In Finland, we have this thing called the Internet of Things. Really big things.
So what we've done is we've teamed up with the organizers of the biggest startup event in Northern Europe and used their context to get access to innovative startups with no previous industry expertise. And we've organized this year 2 hackathons, so time-constrained development challenges to develop new industrial internet applications based on our platform. But unfortunately, I won't have time to go through that one, but we'll be hosting a couple of webinars through the industrial internet now, so hopefully you'll have an opportunity of joining us, and if this is something that you're interested in, please, we're also welcoming contributions there. But that's it. Thank you.